Guys, good morning.
Good morning.
Cool. That tells me my audio is working. Carmen, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Cud.
Are you in the dorm?
No, I'm back home.
Okay.
Yeah, I arrived last Friday.
And back home is?
Spain.
Spain. Cool. I had one student from Spain many years ago, and we recorded a greeting for our MBAs in about 10 different languages. And this young man recorded it in Spanish for us. Well, I hope you're safe back there.
Yeah, we are kind of isolated here, but it's all right.
That's a good thing. We're hermits. We're not getting out for anything. Taking social distancing to the max, I guess.
Yeah, we have to for a while, I guess.
Kamari, have you had your morning coffee or whatever wakes you up? I think you may have gotten up. Kamarian, are you out there? He may have gotten up, logged in and gotten up. Hayden, with a name like Yawn, you don't sound like you'd be a morning person.
I'm definitely not a morning person.
You would think the biggest shock for me coming to MC 17 years ago would have been other things. The biggest shock was how the students hated early classes.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, they hate them here. I was used to teaching 7 a.m. classes, and 8 a.m. classes are a no-no for a lot of the students. Mandy, good morning. Me too. I'm just waiting for the 10 o'clock hour to roll in, and then we'll get started. Torian Hutch, good morning.
Morning.
Well, I am showing 10 o'clock, so we'll get started. One thing, I had some other students mention that their profs were using voiced over PowerPoint, and they seemed to like it. And it occurred to me, I had some more advanced classes that cover this material. and I'd made voiced over PowerPoints back when my voice was better. Not great, just better. Everything's relative, as Einstein would say. But I pared them down. I took the complicated stuff out. I've posted them to the website. So you'll find now that there are some voiced over PowerPoints for every chapter that will be on the final exam, except the last chapter. I'm still working on it, but I'll get those up well before we hit it. I used to take the voiced over PowerPoints and make YouTube videos, but you can't print the slides from a YouTube video. A lot of students like to print the slides. And I also made some adjustments to the basic PowerPoints so they'll be more consistent with those voiced over PowerPoints. If you didn't get, I sent a last minute message out to, grab the latest version of the basic PowerPoints. If you didn't get it, don't worry about it. We'll wing it. Okay. What I want to do today to finish out chapter 9.
I can't believe I've been lied to, but what a good story. And our last post.
What I want to do to finish out chapter 9 is to cover the two-stage growth problems for both dividend model and corporate valuation model. So, for example, and I'm going to jump back and forth just a little bit. There's my slide bar. Okay. When we first looked at the dividend model, I gave you the basic case of Cobb Corporation, where the stockholders require a 15% return. The dividend for the year just ended was $2, and the growth rate in dividends is 5%. Think of this situation as a job. You could actually use this to value all your future earnings from a job, where you get a 5% rate every year right out of the gate. And what we did, there it is. Here was your model. The value of a share of stock was the dividend in the coming year divided by R sub S minus G. And I think for this problem, the dividend in the coming year needed to be calculated first, no biggie. D0 was $2. Growth rate was 5%. So the value of the stock worked out to be $21. As I said earlier, this same little funny looking equation is used in court when you're disabled for life and they figure out your future earnings and discount them back to the present to come up with a settlement. That 5% would have been your future assumed raises. Now, another situation that can pop up, forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit clunky with all of this, is where you've got two stages of growth. Whoops, that didn't work. Sorry. Here we go. We're going to look at Cobb Corporation again, only this time we're going to assume we're going to have a monstrous growth rate in dividends for a couple of years. Then it's going to settle down to a lower level from then on. Think of this like you were looking at a job where they tell you, if we hire you, we're going to give you huge raises the first 2 years, then moderate raises from then on. When you're dealing with a two-stage growth problem, what you do is pretty straightforward. You, you assume you're going to sell the stock at the end of the first stage of growth. So for example, let's get another one in there. So we're looking again at a case where the dividend for the year just ended was $2. And stockholders won a 15% rate of return. But we're assuming the growth rate in dividends for years 1 and 2 will be 30%. Excuse me, there we go. And then after year 2, it settles down into a constant 5%. Now, again, this is our approach. We assume we sell the stock at T equals 2 years from now. Now, if we do that, our future cash benefits will be 2 years worth of dividends, D1 and D2, and the selling price of the stock in year 2. So the dividend in year 1 would be $260. The dividend in year 2 grow again by 30% in the second year. Would be $338. So those would be 2 of our cash benefits. $260 in year 1, $338 in year 2. And then the question is, how do you value all the dividends after year 2? And the truth is, if you look at a timeline, where this is now, that's 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3, and so on, all right? All the way out to infinity, I guess. We've got D1 and D2. What we want to do now is find the value of all the dividends after year 2. If we stand out there 2 years from now and look into the future, we see nothing but a constant growth rate of 5%. So here is a version of your dividend model, but in more generic form. If I wanted the value of a share of stock at time t, I could take the dividend in year t times 1 plus whatever that growth rate is beyond then, divided by this again. Earlier, when you saw this, we just used the price at time 0. We were using the special case. We started with a special case where we were looking at the stock from time 0. So we were assuming the growth rate was constant from time 0. And that was the first problem we worked. And actually the one I worked on this first slide. Now, let me get rid of this, get this out of the way. If we want the stock price in year 2, we take the dividend in year 2 times 1 plus that growth rate we'll have after 2 years. Well, the dividend in year 2 is $3.38. And after that second year, the growth rate is 5%. 1 plus G will be 1 plus 0.05. There's our discount rate, the stockholders' required return. And there is that constant growth rate we see after year 2. If we crank this out, this gives us what we think the stock price would be in year 2, which works out to $35.49. Obviously, this approach involves more steps, but there are our 3 cash benefits. D1, D2, and our selling price. So if we wanted to know what the value of the stock was now, and we assume we're going to sell after 2 years, the value of the stock could be the present value of all those future cash benefits, which would be 2 dividends and the selling price. So the last step we've got a...
Mr. Todd,
Sir.
that problem, since it was D2, wouldn't the growth be 1.3? Because the growth in year 2 is 30%, not 5%.
The growth rate for the first 2 years is 30%, but what we want for this growth rate is the growth rate after year 2. Sorry about that, didn't close my parentheses.
So you're looking for year 2 until it expires or you sell it.
Pretty much, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
I hit something by accident. There. In other words, for the first 2 years, the growth rate is 30%. I don't even know if you can see that. After 2 years, the growth rate is a constant 5% forever. Anyway, to work this kind of problem, you treat it as if you're going to sell the stock at the end of the first stage of growth. Since the first stage of growth ends after 2 years, we're going to sell it at the end of 2 years. So our cash benefits would be 2 years of dividends and the selling price at year 2. And we've just walked through how you calculate those. So the next step is to discount these back to the present.
Mr. Could,
Ma'am,
on the P2, I got another number.
really?
I got 40.74. Maybe I did something wrong.
Well, look, I make mistakes all the time. I'm still getting 35.49. Carmen, we can look at that. You can
Okay.
check your head, but I've had it in my slides and I've double checked it here. I'm pretty sure that's right. Now, so our final step. Here are our future cash benefits. If we sell the stock after 2 years. We'll have a dividend in year 1 of 260, a dividend in year 2 of 338, and then a selling price in year 2, I think, is 35.49. So we could, if you'll notice, both the second dividend and the selling price occur at the same time. So we could say these are our cash benefits. T equals 1, T equals 2. We've got dividends of 260, 338. Stock price in year 2 of 35.49. So our total cash benefits would be 260 in year 1. And let's see, what would that be? 38.87 in year 2. Those would be our future cash benefits. Do you guys remember back in your time value chapter when you used your calculator using the CF key to find present value of uneven cash flows? That's what we would do to discount these back to the present. We need to discount these cash flows back to the present, at our required rate of return, which is 15%. So if we did this, I guess it depends on the calculator you have, but for example, if you had the BA2 plus, your keystrokes would be, you'd hit CF, second clear to get all the old stuff out. There is no cash flow at time 0. Then you've got a cash flow in year 1, the next year, that occurs one time. And then your cash flow in the next year is that total 3887. You'd invoke your NPV function. It asks you for the discount rate. You say 15, enter, down arrow, and compute. And you ought to get a price right now, P0, of 31.65. That's what we think the stock's intrinsic value is now. If you use the HP10B2, you'd hit Shift, clear all, start throwing values into the CF key, but the first one it will assume occurs at time 0, and there is no cash flow at time 0. Then 260. Then 3887. Then give it a discount rate. And then hit Shift NPV. And that also ought to give you a price of 31.65. If you were trying to figure out the present value of your future salaries, where you were going to get a monstrous 30% raise each year for 2 years and then 5% then after, this is how you'd go about it. Let me retrace this. We begin all right, where did we begin? Was this one? We begin by figuring out that since we've got a growth rate that goes for 2 years and then changes, we assume we sell the stock at the end of those 2 years. So if we sold the stock for after 2 years, we'd get 2 years of cash benefit, 2 years of dividends, and a selling price. So we figure out the dividend for year 1, the dividend for year 2, and then using this wonky looking model, figure out what the selling price of the stock would be in year 2. That gives us our 3 cash benefits. So the step that's left discount them back to the present. Since they are uneven cash flows, you'd have to use your CF key. How about a different problem? Let me give you one and see if you can work it out. Zorba Corporation. Yeah. Paid a dividend. Yeah. Last year of what the heck, $5 per share. Dividends are expected to grow at a, I'll tell you what, I'll try to keep this very straightforward. They're expected to grow at a 20% rate for each of the next 2 years. And then grow at 3% thereafter. I know what's going on. My thumb's in the wrong spot. Okay. Zorba stockholders I can fit it on the whiteboard, but your images are over there and I don't want to try to write over those. Zorba stockholders require, I don't know, what did I say, 20 and then 3, require, sorry. I'm still learning with my little toy. Sorry about that. Get bigger. No. Well, okay. We'll work with small print for a minute. Figure this out later. Zorba stockholders require a, let's see, 3, why not? A 13% rate of return. Okay, so here are the following questions. A, when should you assume you will sell the stock and why? What will be your future cash benefits? And by that, I mean all dividends and selling price. And then finally, what's the value of the stock now? I just found the key I should have found earlier. Okay. Shall I let you try this, or you want me to just walk you through it?
Walk us through it.
Okay. So, when should you assume you're going to sell the stock? A year from now, 5 years, what? With our approach,
For 2 years?
2 years. You assume you're going to sell the stock at the end of the first growth period. And this first growth period of 20% increase in the dividends goes for 2 years. So when would we sell the stock? After 2 years. Why? Because that's the end of the first growth stage, and that's our approach. Now, what will be our future cash benefits? I'm going to see if I can work it in over here. The dividend in year 1 would be last year's dividend of $5 times 1.2. So that'd be $6. The dividend in year 2, playing leapfrog, would increase that dividend again by, well, let me write it out. It would be D1 times 1 plus, again, that 20% growth rate. So what would that be, 720, I think? So our future cash benefits would consist of D1 and D2, which we just found. And then the selling price after 2 years. So the selling price after 2 years would be the dividend in year 2 times 1 plus that long-term growth rate of 3%. This thing is jumping around on me, sorry. Divided by our required rate of return minus that long-term growth rate. So we'd take 720 times 1 plus that long-term growth rate, divide by our required rate of return, which is 13%. There it is. Our required rate of return minus that long-term growth rate. And guys, I'm making this up, so you guys be my fact checkers. Try that again. That didn't look right. There we go. 7416. And that would be our third cash benefit. We think we can sell this stock after 2 years for 7416. So our total cash benefits we'd be getting a dividend in year one. Yeah. We'd be getting, in year one, we'd get a dividend of $6. In year two, we'd get a dividend of $7.20 plus a selling price, we hope, of $74.16. So our total cash benefits would be $6 in year one. And I think that works out to $81.36 in year two. And these would be our total cash benefits in the future. So the last step would be to discount them back to the present. And let me see how far I can push this. Using a BA2 plus, it'd get rid of all the old stuff. There is no cash benefit at time zero. Your cash benefit in year one is $6. One time. Your cash benefit in year two would be, your total would be $81.36. Hit NPV and it asks you for the value of I, your discount rate, and that's the stockholder's required rate of return. And let me catch up with you and see what I get.
I got $69.03.
Let me see if I get the same thing. Sounds about right. $69.03 it is. We have a winner. And what is that? That's what we think the stock is worth right now. If you use the HP 10B2, you'd clear out all the old stuff. There is no cash flow at time zero, but you've got to throw a zero in so your calculator doesn't lose track of when each cash flow occurs. Then 6, then 81.36, then give it the discount rate and hit, shift NPV. And you too should get 69.03. How many of you are getting those figures? Show of hands. Good, Hampton. Anybody else?
I do.
Cool. Now that's the dividend model where we've got two stages of growth. And if you can understand this, you better understand the basic dividend model. Now, back when we introduced the basic dividend model, we did two things. We calculated the stock value, but we also estimated rate of return. Well, with two-stage growth, we don't do that part. All we do is come up with our estimate of what the stock is worth. All right. Any questions on this before I skip over to the other model, the corporate valuation model, and look at two-stage growth? It's messy, but it's fun at parties. No, it's just messy. All right. Let's go. My print's so small, I can't read it. There we go. Let's go to that corporate valuation model. And once again, I want to first go over the case where we have constant growth. And I gave you a problem in class. Actually, I'm not sure if these are part of the new slides. Nope, not. Sorry, 1 second. Where is it? Oh, I didn't give it to you. I don't have it in these slides, so let me make up a problem for you. Let's assume we've got the following problem. For the, I don't know, the Dune Corporation. We've got free cash flow in the coming year of 50 mil. We expect the growth rate in free cash flow to be a constant. Now let me change it. Free cash flow for the year just ended, FCF sub 0 is 50 mil. And we expect the growth rate in free cash flow to be 8% per year forever. We have a cost of capital of 18%. And June has, right now, marketable securities of 40 mil, notes payable of 60 mil, and long-term debt of 140 mil. I'm loading you up with information. And I don't know, let's say 3 million shares of, no, 2 million. 2 million shares of stock outstanding. With the corporate valuation model, the first step, I'll do it down here, is find the value of the operating assets. And if we assume they grow at a constant rate, then the value of the operating assets right now, t equals 0, would be the free cash flow in the coming year divided by the cost of capital minus the growth rate in free cash flow. So our free cash flow for the year just ended was 50 mil. But if we multiply that by 1 plus the growth rate, that gives us the free cash flow in the coming year. I'm taking a little shortcut. In fact, free cash flow in the coming year ought to be $54 million. Divide that by the cost of capital in decimal form, minus that growth rate, and we get the value of operating assets. There. We get the value of operating assets to be, well, I guess 540. Now that's step one. Any questions on this so far? Then step two, we use the balance sheet equation. Which basically says assets are equal to liabilities plus equity. Only when we apply the corporate valuation model, we separate assets into operating assets and non-operating assets, which are really just marketable securities. And for liabilities, we only use interest-bearing debt. So we use notes payable and long-term debt. And then we've got the value of equity. I don't know what's happening. I think my fingers become electrified at some point. All right. So what did we find as the value of the operating assets? $540, right? And what do we have in marketable securities? 40 mil. Did it again. Don't know how I did it. Thank you. It's better. What have we got in notes payable? 60. In long-term debt, 140 mil. And we end up with an algebraic equation with one unknown. So we solve. Sorry about all that. And let's see, 580 minus 200, what, 380? That's what we think all the stock shares together are worth. So, like the other day, for step 3, we just divide by the number of shares. So our estimate of the value of the stock per share would be the value of all the stock, the value of equity, divided by the number of shares. So that would be 380 million bucks divided by 2 million shares. And we end up with a high price stock worth 190 per share. This is like a problem we worked Monday. I just made up a different example, but the key point is this problem had one stage of growth. That is like the worst handwriting in the world. But one stage of growth. How do I know? Because I said the growth rate in free cash flow right out of the gate is 8%. There aren't two different growth rates there. There's only one. Is this making sense to you guys so far? I worked a problem just like this Monday, just different numbers. I'm going to pick on people just, no, I'm not going to pick on anybody. Haley, is this making sense to you?
So,
Okay. Now let's look at the same kind of problem, the corporate valuation model, but now with two stages of growth. Give me 1 second. I want to be sure I'm, well, all right, fine. So here's a problem. Quasar Corporation had free cash flow last year. Of 100 mil. Free cash flow is expected to grow %20 in the coming year, I'm hitting the, oh, come on, man. I'm doing something. Let's see, 20% in the coming year, then 10% in the second year, and then 5% thereafter. Come back here. For Quasar, we have the following info. The WAC is 25%. Quasar has no marketable securities. No notes payable. They tried to borrow money, but they looked so risky, no one would loan it to them. But they do have some long-term debt of 125 mil. And they have 30 million shares of stock outstanding. Now, in this case, we actually have one growth rate for the first year, another growth rate for the second year, and then it settles down into that 5% thereafter. So the first stage, the first step, is to find the value of our operating assets. Right now, find the value of the operating assets today. Now, if you recall, the value of the operating assets is the present value of all future free cash flow. Our approach is sort of like with a stock and two-stage growth. Our approach, we assume we sell the operating, golly, don't float away from me like that. Sell the operating assets at the, I could say, end of the two stages of growth. I could also say at the start of the constant growth period. In this particular case, the constant growth starts after 2 years. So we literally assume to find the value of the operating assets, we first assume we sell them after 2 years. Now, what would be our cash benefits? Well, we want the present value of all future free cash flow. So the free cash flow in the first year would be the free cash flow for the year just ended, plus that first year growth rate of 20%. So 100 mil times 1 plus 20%, that'd be 120 mil. That would be one of our free cash flow benefits. Then playing leapfrog. Free cash flow in the second year would be the free cash flow in the first year times that second year growth rate, which was 10%. So 120 times 1 plus 10% would be, shameful, I pulled out my calculator for that. 132. Remember, the value of operating assets is the present value of all future free cash flow. We have figured out the free cash flow for the first 2 years, but the next step is to figure out what the value of all free cash flow beyond year 2 is worth. And it's sort of like that dividend model. If we were to draw a timeline where this is now, this is a year from now, 2 years from now, and so on. And of course, we assume a company lasts forever. We have found our free cash flow in year 1 and in year 2. But after year 2, this growth rate settles down to a constant, 5%. I originally gave you the formula for the value of operating assets, assuming the free cash flow grows at a constant rate from the outset. But if we stand 2 years from now and look into the future, we see that from that point on, free cash flow grows at a constant rate. So we could say that the value of the operating assets two years from now would be the free cash flow in year 2 times 1 plus that long-term growth rate divided by our cost of capital minus that long-term growth rate. So we've got free cash flow in year 2 of 132 mil. And we believe after 2 years, it'll grow at a constant 5%. we divide by our cost of capital, which is, here we go, 25%. Minus that long-term growth rate. And we get I'm getting 693 mil. Oops. Yeah, okay. So in terms of valuing the operating assets, we see free cash flow benefits of 120 in year one, 132 in year two, and then also in year two when we sell those operating assets, 693. To finish out the first step, the value of the operating assets, which is the present value of all future free cash flow, we need to discount these three figures back to the present. So our free cash flow benefits are well, we've got free cash flow in year one of, I forgot, was it 120? Free cash flow in year two of 132, I think. And then we're going to sell the operating assets in year two for, forgive me, I forgot the number. $693. There we go. So free cash flow in year one and two, we calculated, and the value of operations at t equals 2, that's the value of all free cash flow beyond year two, discounted back what in the to year $2. So in essence, our total free cash flow benefits could be expressed as 120 at t equals 1 and 825 at t equals 2. And that is an expression of all future free cash flow benefits. Since the value of operating assets is the present value of that, we'd use our CF key. And with the BA2 plus, clear everything out. There is no cash benefit at time 0. We're looking at 120 in year 1 time. And then 825 in year 2. Give it the discount rate of 25%. And I'm getting a value of operating assets now of oh, wow. I'm getting 624. Anybody else get that figure? I'm not going to put the keystrokes for the HP 10B2. You guys know how to do that. So we've got a value of operating assets of 624. Now we need to run it through the balance sheet equation. And that's our second step. Our operating assets are worth 624. If I recall, for this problem, I said they have no marketable securities. They have no notes payable, but they have long-term debt of, does anybody remember what figure I gave you?
$125 million.
125 mil? Okay, cool.
Yes, sir.
So we solve. And the value of equity would be the value of the operating asset, well, all the assets, which is 624, minus the value of the debt, so I'm getting the value for the equity of 499 mil. Then for step 3, we just divide by the number of shares. We think all the equity is worth 499. And forgive me again, do you guys remember how many shares I gave you for this problem?
30 million.
30 million shares. Thank you, Haley. So the stock would be worth $16.63 a share. It's messy, but it's fun at parties. But you've now seen how you apply the 2-stage growth scenario to the dividend model and to the corporate valuation model. And if I've covered it, it's fair game. Any questions before we adjourn? I know this was a lot, but it was something that we really needed to cover. For the next class meeting, please bring your slides to chapter 10. Quick question before we get out of here. Have any of you looked at the voiced over PowerPoints yet? I'd like to know if you find those useful. I think you will, but we'll see. All right, guys, stay safe. I'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.